30 years ago, a young girl was found wandering in a quiet forest under mysterious circumstances. For decades, a haunting question lingered. What really transpired that day? Now, the woman she has grown into is prepared to unveil the harsh truth, a revelation that will astonish, inspire, and remind us all of the incredible resilience of the human spirit. The early morning sunlight streamed through the thick canopy of the forest, casting light on scattered patches of moss and fallen pine needles. The air was heavy with the earthy scent of damp soil and the subtle sounds of wildlife. Officer Ethan Blake moved carefully, his boots crunching softly on the forest floor. He was part of a multi-agency search team, which included local police, state troopers, and forest rangers, scouring the woods for an escaped inmate who had fled a transport vehicle the night before. The tension was palpable. Every snapped twig or distant bird call sent a wave of alertness through the group. Blake's partner, Ranger Jessica Green, trailed a few feet behind him, her radio crackling with updates. Footprints heading north by the creek. A deputy's voice reported, "No sign of the suspect yet." The forest stretched for miles, a labyrinth of towering pines and dense undergrowth. It was the perfect hideout for someone desperate enough to vanish into its shadows. But as the team pressed deeper, a faint sound stopped Blake in his tracks. It wasn't the heavy footfall of a fugitive. It was softer, lighter, a whimper. Blake raised his hand, signaling the group to halt. Green crouched low, her eyes scanning the area. "Hear that?" Blake whispered. The sound came again, a feeble cry followed by a soft bark. Confusion flickered across Green's face. "A dog," she mouthed. Blake nodded. Carefully, they pushed aside a tangle of vines. There, in a small hollow beneath a fallen pine trunk, they found her. A little girl no older than 6 or 7, her face smudged with dirt and her hair tangled with twigs. Her wide, terrified eyes locked onto theirs. Pressed against her chest was a scruffy terrier, trembling but fiercely protective. Blake's heart lurched. This was the last thing any of them had expected. "Hey, sweetheart," Blake said gently, setting his weapon aside and crouching to her level. "Are you okay? Where's your family?" The girl didn't answer. She seemed more frightened by them than relieved to see help. One shaky hand gripped the dog's fur, her knuckles white. Green immediately radioed for medical support. "We found a child about 6 or 7 years old. She's alive but disoriented." On the other end, stunned silence gave way to a flurry of activity. "Copy that, we're on our way." The rest of the team abandoned their fugitive hunt, converging on this unexpected discovery. But the girl recoiled as they tried to coax her out of the hollow. Her lips quivered, and tears sprang to her eyes. The dog let out a weak bark, as if warning them not to come too close. Determined not to frighten her further, Blake offered his canteen. Finally, exhaustion overcame the child, and she let them wrap her in a spare jacket. That morning, in the midst of a frantic manhunt, a second mystery was born. How did this child end up alone in the forest? The girl was taken straight to the local hospital, where Dr. Elaine Hopkins did her best to evaluate her. It was 1995, and resources were limited in the small town. The girl remained mute, though she wasn't entirely unresponsive. She flinched at sudden movements and clung to her dog, whom she called Buddy. The hospital staff treated her minor cuts and bruises, but the deeper wounds, the ones no one could see, were far more troubling. The police and social services arrived, but no one in the area had reported a missing child. Pictures of the girl were circulated, and headlines blared. "Little girl found lost in forest. No identification, no family found." Rumors swirled. Had she wandered off from a campground? Was she the victim of a custody dispute? The only clue was a small Polaroid photograph found in her jacket pocket. It showed the girl smiling, holding Buddy in a sunlit backyard. But no one recognized the setting, and no family came forward. The authorities placed her in temporary foster care with Alice and Charles Morgan, a kind-hearted couple who lived on the outskirts of town. Alice, a retired teacher, and Charles, a part-time postal worker, agreed to care for the girl until her identity could be uncovered. They called her Lucia, a placeholder name that would stick for years to come. Lucia's first night with the Morganes was restless. She clung to Buddy, her only anchor in a world that felt foreign and frightening. Alice tiptoed into her room and whispered, "Honey, do you remember your name?" Lucia's lips parted, but no sound came out. Instead, tears welled up in her eyes, reflecting the soft glow of the bedside lamp. Alice gathered her into her arms, letting her cry. In that moment, both women realized the child's trauma ran deeper than anyone had imagined. Over the following weeks, fragments of Lucia's memory surfaced. She had vivid nightmares and would wake up screaming, clutching Buddy and muttering, "He grabbed me." Alice pushed for professional help, and Lucia began seeing a child psychologist, Dr. Reynolds. Through drawings, Lucia revealed glimpses of her past: a stick-figure man in a cap, a car, and tall trees. Each clue pointed to a kidnapping, but the details remained elusive. Meanwhile, the community rallied around Lucia. When a disheveled man claiming to be her uncle showed up at the Morganes' home, the townspeople's protective instincts ignited. The man had no proof of his relationship to Lucia and quickly fled after Charles confronted him. The incident only deepened the mystery and the fear that someone out there still wanted to harm her. Years passed, and Lucia grew into a quiet, resilient woman, carving out a life for herself as a veterinary assistant. She stayed in touch with Alice and Charles, who had become her adoptive parents, but the past always lingered, a shadow she couldn't quite escape. Then, in the 2020s, a detective named Anna Morales reached out. A suspect in an unrelated case had confessed to a decades-old kidnapping attempt, one that matched Lucia's story. Reluctantly, Lucia agreed to meet with Morales. When she saw a photo of the suspect, a younger man in a cap, the memories came flooding back. A struggle, a hand over her mouth, Buddy barking frantically, and the tall trees of the forest. "He was the man who grabbed me," Lucia said, her voice trembling but firm. She revealed the ugly truth. She had been lured from her backyard by a stranger promising puppies. The man had panicked in the forest, abandoning her, when he realized law enforcement was closing in. Buddy had stayed by her side, her only protector. The suspect confessed, granting Lucia the closure she had long sought. She returned to the forest for the first time since 1995, placing flowers at the spot where she had been discovered. As she knelt there, holding a photo of Buddy, she whispered, "Thank you, Buddy." Lucia's journey is one of survival, resilience, and the transformative power of truth. It serves as a reminder that even the darkest experiences can lead to healing, and that courage can inspire others to confront their own hidden truths. As Lucia emerged from the forest that day, she carried not only the weight of her past, but also the strength to face whatever the future held.